She pulled away. You felt it. That sudden silence, that small hesitation in her voice, the invisible wall that rose between what she once gave freely and what she now withholds. And instantly your chest tightened, your mind began racing, your sense of control shattered. The fear whispered, "She is slipping away. She no longer feels the same. You are losing her." This is the battlefield most men never escape. They panic, they plead, they over-explain, they chase. They play directly into the script she unconsciously or deliberately writes, a script designed to test the gravity of your presence. And every time they fail. They reveal their weakness. They confirm the suspicion. They prove they cannot hold frame. But what if there was a counterstroke? Not just any reaction, but a calculated countermove forged in the fire of strategy itself. A maneuver not of desperate emotion, but of deliberate power. Here, Niccolò Machiavelli enters the stage. The man who dissected the anatomy of power, who revealed that fortune favors not the meek, but the cunning. His writings were not on dating, not on romance, but on the core mechanics of human behavior. He taught that influence, loyalty, and desire are not accidents. They are engineered. They are secured by strategy. And if she pulls away, the Machiavellian truth is this: you do not chase her shadow. You become the fire that makes her shadow irrelevant. You do not protest her distance. You transform that distance into proof of your sovereignty. This is not about games. It is about psychology. It is about restoring the balance of power where it belongs. The thesis is clear. When she pulls away, the Machiavellian countermove is not reaction, but orchestration. You dictate the frame. You command the perception. You embody the unshakable presence that transforms her withdrawal into her return. Machiavelli's core philosophy is simple, brutal, and liberating. People are not ruled by truth, but by perception. He wrote that it is not necessary to be good, but it is necessary to appear good. It is not necessary to be loved, but it is necessary to be feared if love falters. What does this mean in the realm of male-female dynamics? It means that her pulling away is not about her words, not even about her emotions. It is about perception. She must perceive your value as untouchable, your presence as sovereign, your attention as scarce. The fatal error of most men is to offer more when she offers less, to give when she withdraws. This imbalance confirms in her mind that his value was never intrinsic, it was dependent on her affection. She sees that his gravity is not his own, but borrowed from her, and with that realization, her attraction collapses. The Machiavellian inversion is ruthless. When she retreats, you do not advance. You retreat as well, but not in weakness. In strength, in silence. In the aura of self-possession that communicates, without words, that you are the sun around which she orbits. If she moves away, it is she who loses warmth, not you. Consider how this principle plays into psychology. Women are magnetized not to the man who needs, but to the man who commands the environment of need. They test, they withdraw, they pull away not always because they wish to leave, but to measure. They are drawn to the contrast between closeness and distance. They need to feel the polarity that proves you are not an appendage to their emotions, but a man grounded in his own sovereign axis. Machiavelli would say that power is preserved not by constant generosity, but by selective generosity. The prince gives gifts when it consolidates loyalty. He withholds when giving would erode his authority. Apply this to intimacy, and the lesson is clear. Your attention is a gift, and it must never appear as desperation. Your silence, your distance, your calm withdrawal in response to hers, is the countermove that redefines her perception of you. Suddenly, she does not see a man scrambling to keep her. She sees a man who remains whole without her. That is the oxygen of attraction. This philosophy does not exist in theory alone. Imagine the scenario. She texts less, she grows colder, she spends more time elsewhere. The average man floods her inbox, presses for answers, begs for reassurance. He hands her the crown of power. But the Machiavellian man sees it differently. He withdraws not in complaint, but in quiet. He invests his energy elsewhere. He sharpens his presence in the gym, in his mission, in the cultivation of his world. He creates a void where his energy once overfilled her. That void becomes unbearable. For nature abhors a vacuum, and female desire abhors the absence of masculine gravity. She returns not because he chased, but because he did not. She returns because his silence forced her to confront the emptiness of life without his attention. This is not cruelty. This is psychological alignment. This is the dance of polarity played with mastery rather than naivety. The biographical anchor reinforces the point. Machiavelli himself lived in the turbulence of Florence, a city where alliances shifted overnight, where loyalty was fickle, where power was never guaranteed. He knew firsthand that to cling in desperation was death. His exile proved it. Once valued, then discarded, he saw that fortune is a mistress who respects not affection but audacity. He concluded that survival required a man to cultivate the art of appearing indispensable while never becoming dependent. It is no different in relationships. To be too available, too predictable, too dependent is to invite exile from her desire. To embody sovereignty, to withdraw when tested, to create the perception of scarcity is to secure return. And so the final edict is delivered with clarity. If she pulls away, you face a choice. You can react like the common man panicked, pleading, collapsing into weakness. Or you can respond like the Machiavellian prince measured, composed, commanding the frame without lifting a finger. One path leads to her fading interest, to the erosion of respect, to the silent end. The other path leads to her return, not out of pity, but out of renewed hunger for the presence she almost lost. The choice is not about her. It is about you. Will you remain the man whose gravity depends on her orbit? Or will you become the sovereign sun that draws her back by the sheer inevitability of your presence? That is the countermove. That is the test. That is the doctrine of Machiavelli, reborn for the battlefield of desire. Power is never neutral. Attraction is never static. Both are in motion, like tides pulled by unseen forces. When she pulls away, you are witnessing not merely her whim, but the ancient mechanics of desire itself. And here is the brutal truth. If you collapse, if you scramble to reassure her, if you attempt to fill the silence with your words, you prove yourself unworthy of the position you once held. The mask slips, and she sees what lies beneath, not the sovereign, not the force, but the beggar. And once that image is formed, it is nearly impossible to erase. A Machiavellian countermove rescues you from this trap. It commands you to embrace the paradox, that by doing less, you achieve more. By withdrawing, you create presence. By maintaining silence, you generate noise in her mind. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. And in the realm of intimacy, this does not mean cruelty. It means that the fear of losing you must always outweigh your fear of losing her. This imbalance of gravity is what makes her return. She may not even understand it consciously, but something within her stirs when you do not chase. It is the same instinct that makes her admire the man whose life continues without her at the center. It is the same instinct that pulls her back toward the one who is not waiting at the door, but already walking the path of his own kingdom. Think of the psychological mirror this creates. When she retreats and you retreat as well, you reflect her action back to her, but with higher energy. She withdraws, but you do not chase, you expand elsewhere. You show her, without speaking, that your energy is sovereign. This mirror unsettles her. Because she expected validation, she expected pursuit, she expected to feel her power. And when she does not receive it, she begins to question herself instead of questioning you. This is the inversion of control. Instead of you spiraling into uncertainty, she spirals. Instead of you begging for reassurance, she seeks it from you. This is why the countermove is not passive. It is active in its restraint, strategic in its silence, deliberate in its absence. It is not a sulk, not a pout, not a manipulation born of insecurity. It is the orchestration of perception. You are no longer responding to her emotion. You are writing the script of her perception. And Machiavelli's timeless wisdom confirms this. Perception rules reality. A prince who is hated cannot hold power, but a prince who appears strong, even when he falters, can secure loyalty. So too in intimacy. The man who appears sovereign, even in silence, secures attraction. But let us push deeper. Why is this countermove so effective? Because female psychology is attuned to strength, not in declarations, but in demonstrations. Words collapse under the weight of fear. Promises break under the gravity of insecurity. What endures is the demonstration of composure. She pulls away, and you remain whole. She tests, and you remain unshaken. She withdraws, and your life expands in her absence. This is the living proof of sovereignty. This is the display that her instincts cannot ignore. She sees in you what so many men lack, the ability to govern oneself before seeking to govern another. Machiavelli knew that the state collapses not because of external enemies alone, but because of internal disorder. A man is no different. If you cannot hold yourself, you cannot hold her. If your emotions sway you like reeds in the wind, she will never rest in your presence. Women crave the man who remains the same at the center of the storm, not because he resists emotion, but because he governs it. This is the countermove: governance of self, orchestration of perception, and demonstration of sovereignty. And so the warning is sharp. If you ignore this law, if you rush toward her when she retreats, if you prove to her that her withdrawal controls your reality, you destroy the attraction at its root. You kill the polarity. You reduce yourself to the countless men who orbit the gravitational pull of her attention. But if you obey this law, if you embody the Machiavellian countermove, you become not just the man she desires, but the man she respects. Respect is the foundation. Without it, love is shallow. With it, desire is unbreakable. This is the crossroads where every man finds himself. She pulls away. Your heart demands action. Your mind races for solutions. But sovereignty whispers, hold, stand still, withdraw with dignity, focus on your mission, do not chase. Let her feel the cold space you leave behind. Because in that silence, in that void, in that absence of validation, she will see what most women never find: a man who cannot be moved, a man who commands himself, a man who does not beg for the crown, but wears it as his birthright. That is the countermove. That is the Machiavellian doctrine of attraction. That is how you turn her retreat into her inevitable return. Then hear this. The final crescendo does not whisper. It does not plead. It does not bargain. It arrives like thunder. It splits the silence with authority. It brands itself into the mind of every man who listens. Because this is not merely about one woman pulling away. It is not even about relationships. It is about your very identity as a man. Every retreat, every hesitation, every test she throws at you is a mirror of life itself. The world pulls away. Fortune withdraws. Allies vanish. Your own confidence sometimes recedes into shadows. What you do in those moments defines not just your love life, but your destiny. If you collapse, if you beg, if you chase, you become one more man bound by the leash of approval. Your worth is chained to her recognition, your power outsourced to her validation. And in that state, no matter how desperately you fight to keep her, she will already be gone. Not because she despises you, but because she cannot respect you. Respect is the soil from which attraction grows, and without it, desire withers. The collapse of sovereignty is the collapse of respect. But if you stand firm, if you embody the silence of strength, If you let her retreat without breaking stride, you reveal the deeper truth. You never depended on her orbit. You were the axis all along. This revelation electrifies her instincts, because it touches the ancient core of polarity. The feminine seeks the force that will not dissolve when tested. The feminine craves the presence that remains unmoved when the storm rages. Your sovereignty is the magnet. Your restraint is the countermove. Your composure is the fire that draws her back. And here lies the Machiavellian genius. Most men think power is expressed in endless motion, in loud declarations, in frantic proving of worth. But Machiavelli understood that power often resides in what you do not do. The prince who refrains from unnecessary generosity, the leader who withholds his hand until the exact moment, the man who chooses silence when others scream, this is the man who holds the strings of perception. This is the man who appears untouchable. And in appearing untouchable, he becomes untouchable. So when she pulls away, remember, this is not a tragedy. It is an invitation. It is your test, your trial, your proving ground. She is asking, whether consciously or unconsciously, are you sovereign or are you slave to my emotions? Your answer cannot be words. It must be presence. It must be silence. It must be the calm withdrawal that declares, I am whole without you. I am fire without your air. I am sovereign without your crown. And when you say this without saying it, when you demonstrate this truth through your actions, the paradox ignites. She returns. Not to a man who chased, not to a man who begged, but to the man who showed her the storm could not touch his center. This is the final edict. You have a choice, and it will define you. You can collapse into the common, forever bound by the gravity of others, forever chasing what flees, forever surrendering sovereignty. Or you can rise into the uncommon, embody the Machiavellian countermove, and stand as the axis around which all else turns. The world respects the man who governs himself. Women desire the man who commands himself. Fortune bends for the man who directs himself. Be that man. Be the sovereign. Be the prince who does not chase, but draws. Be the sun whose light does not dim when one planet strays from orbit. Because the truth is undeniable. When she pulls away, and you stand sovereign, she will feel the gravity that no retreat can escape. And she will return not because you begged her, but because you left her no choice. That is the doctrine. That is the power. That is the Machiavellian countermove. Then let us expand deeper, because a doctrine unfinished is no doctrine at all. You asked for the middle tier, the philosophical edict, and so we must carry this manifesto to its rightful weight. We have declared the thesis. We have carved the contours of Machiavelli's countermove. Now we descend into the battlefield of lived scenarios, where theory meets blood and breath, where every man listening will recognize himself, and where the sovereign must emerge. Picture the first scenario, the early stage of attraction. You meet her, sparks ignite, the current flows. She responds to your presence. She mirrors your energy, her eyes light with possibility. But then, almost inevitably, she slows. Her replies take longer, her laughter dulls, her warmth cools. To the untrained man, panic sets in. He believes the dream is slipping through his fingers. He floods her phone, he escalates his compliments, he intensifies his pursuit. Each message is a dagger into his own gravity. She sees his desire climbing as hers descends, and instinctively she recoils further. The countermove in this stage is sovereign silence. You match her cooling not with desperate heat, but with dignified distance. You withdraw energy and redirect it into your life. You create a vacuum where your validation once was. And that vacuum becomes irresistible. She feels the contrast between your presence and your absence, and it awakens in her the realization. His attention was not free, it was earned, and now it is gone. That absence burns brighter than 1,000 frantic texts. That is the early stage countermove. Second scenario, the relationship that has settled into routine. Months pass, maybe years. She grows familiar with you, comfortable. She begins to test. A cold shoulder here, a sharp comment there, less enthusiasm for your touch, more attention even elsewhere. The weak man senses decline and responds with gifts, with apologies, with attempts to fix what is not broken, but merely being tested. This is the collapse of polarity. He sacrifices his edge for the illusion of peace. But the Machiavellian man knows that routine is the assassin of desire, and tests are invitations for him to prove his sovereignty again. When she withdraws in this stage, the countermove is not appeasement. It is reinvestment in his own ascent. He trains harder. He sharpens his craft. He expands his empire. He shows her not with words, but with trajectory, that her withdrawal does not cage him. It liberates him. She sees that she cannot dull his edge. She sees that her distance does not domesticate him, but ignites him. And suddenly, her test backfires. The very withdrawal she thought might weaken him becomes the reason she desires him more. Third scenario, after intimacy. You shared the night, the closeness, the passion. But now she grows distant. Many men collapse here most violently. They assume she regrets. They assume she is gone. They assume they must reassure her of her value or beg for another chance. This frantic energy confirms to her that she gave herself to a man who cannot hold the weight of the moment. She regrets not the act, but the revelation. The countermove is mastery of post-intimacy composure. He does not chase. He does not beg. He does not smother. He remains present in his life, allowing her to process her own emotions without interference. His silence after intimacy proves that he is not intoxicated by novelty, that his worth was not confirmed by her body, that he remains sovereign in desire. And this, paradoxically, draws her back, because she cannot easily categorize him with the others who collapsed. He is different. He is whole. He is rare. Fourth scenario. When competition arises, another man enters her orbit. She grows colder, distracted, perhaps even flaunts the attention. The insecure man feels threatened, lashes out, demands reassurance, attempts to prove superiority. His jealousy betrays his weakness. He confirms to her that another man's shadow controls his emotions. The countermove is radical indifference. Not passive, not numb, but sovereign. He does not acknowledge the competition, because in his reality, there is none. He is the axis, the standard, the gravitational force. He knows his value is not diminished by another's presence. His calm in the face of rivalry unsettles her. She expected rage. She expected pleading. She expected fear. What she sees is sovereignty. And that comparison annihilates the rival. For no man is more magnetic than the one who does not compete, because he has already won by existing as himself. Fifth scenario, the emotional storm. She withdraws not because of waning desire, but because of her own turmoil. Stress, insecurity, mood swings, chaos. The weak man attempts to fix her, to argue her into calm, to demand consistency. He tries to battle her emotions with logic, and he drowns. The countermove here is the fortress. He does not resist her storm. He absorbs it by standing still. He does not attempt to fix. He embodies stability. His presence becomes the unmoving ground beneath her trembling. And eventually, the storm exhausts itself against his silence. She returns, not because he solved her chaos, but because he proved he could withstand it. This is Machiavellian, not in cruelty, but in strategy. A prince does not argue with the flood. He builds high walls and lets the waters recede. Now let us distill these countermoves into the toolkit of sovereignty. First, understand the law of perception. What she sees is more powerful than what is. Never reveal need. Never reveal panic. Govern yourself in such a way that her withdrawal becomes a stage upon which your composure performs. Second, master the art of silence. Not sulking silence, not bitter silence, but sovereign silence. The silence of a man too engaged in his mission to chase. Third, embrace scarcity. Your attention is the most valuable currency. Do not flood the market. Withdraw when it is devalued. Reinvest only when it is earned. Fourth, embody trajectory. Your life must not stall because she hesitates. Your path must expand. Your mission must accelerate. Show her that your gravity increases even as she pulls away. Fifth, radiate inevitability. Be the sun. Her retreat cannot dim your light. It only removes her from its warmth. And in time, she will crave it again. And so we arrive at the session forcer, the closing hammer that brands itself upon the mind. If she pulls away, you face not just her distance, but your reflection. You face the truth of your sovereignty. Will you chase her shadow into oblivion, or will you stand as the light that no shadow can escape? Will you collapse into the common, or rise into the uncommon? Machiavelli whispers across centuries. Power is not given, it is taken. Respect is not begged for, it is commanded. Desire is not preserved by pleading, but by presence. The choice is yours. Become the sovereign who embodies silence, scarcity, trajectory, inevitability. Become the sun around which her orbit is inevitable. And remember this above all. When she pulls away, you do not lose her. You test her. You reveal her. You define yourself. And if you hold, if you remain, if you embody the countermove, she will return not out of pity, not out of convenience, but out of the gravitational certainty that no force on earth can resist. That is the doctrine. That is the manifesto. That is the Machiavellian countermove.